What if I told you that one of the greatest leaders of Christianity, the man who would become the foundation of the church itself, was once just a simple fisherman, hot-tempered, impulsive, and even capable of denying his best friend when it mattered most? Yet, despite his flaws, he rose to become a rock upon which faith itself was built. This is the story of St. Peter, the fisherman from Galilee, who became the first pope, a martyr, and one of the most beloved saints in all of Christianity. Simon, later known as Peter, was born in Bethsaida, a small fishing village along the Sea of Galilee. Life in Galilee was simple but tough. Fishing was demanding work, long nights, unpredictable weather, and uncertain catches. Simon grew up in this world where survival depended on resilience, strength, and perseverance. Alongside his brother Andrew, Simon worked daily as a fisherman. His rugged hands, weathered face, and strong build reflected his trade. He wasn't a scholar or religious leader. He was an ordinary man with ordinary struggles. Yet, fate had extraordinary plans for him. Andrew was among the first disciples of John the Baptist, and it was Andrew who introduced Simon to Jesus of Nazareth. This meeting would change Simon's life forever. When Jesus saw him, he declared, "You are Simon, son of John. You shall be called Cephas," which means Peter or the rock. From that moment, Simon's destiny was set. Peter's calling came in a dramatic way. One day, after a fruitless night of fishing, Jesus instructed Peter to cast his net again. Though tired and doubtful, Peter obeyed, and his nets filled with so many fish they began to break. Amazed, Peter fell at Jesus' feet, overwhelmed by his power. Jesus looked at him and said, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be fishers of men." Leaving everything behind, his nets, his boat, his livelihood, Peter followed Jesus. This act of trust, leaving behind his old life for a future he could not yet see, showed his courage and faith. Peter quickly became one of Jesus' closest companions. Along with James and John, he witnessed moments of great significance: the raising of Jairus' daughter, the transfiguration, and the agony in the Garden of Gethsemane. Peter was passionate, outspoken, and often the first to act. When Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" it was Peter who boldly declared, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Yet Peter was also deeply human. His impulsiveness often led to mistakes. He tried to walk on water toward Jesus, but began to sink when fear overtook him. He resisted when Jesus predicted his suffering, only to be rebuked. "Get behind me, Satan." Most famously, in the darkest hour, Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times as fear overtook him. When the rooster crowed, he remembered Jesus' words and wept bitterly. After the resurrection, Jesus appeared to his disciples. One morning by the Sea of Galilee, he shared breakfast with them. There he turned to Peter. 3 times Jesus asked, "Do you love me?" And 3 times Peter answered yes. Each time, Jesus responded, "Feed my sheep." This moment restored Peter, turning his denial into a declaration of love and commissioning him as the shepherd of Christ's followers. It was a powerful act of forgiveness and trust, showing that failure was not the end of Peter's story, but the beginning of his mission. On the day of Pentecost, Peter stood before the crowds in Jerusalem. Filled with the Holy Spirit, he preached boldly about the risen Christ. His words moved thousands, and about 3,000 people were baptized that day. This was the birth of the church, and Peter was at the center of it. He became the leader of the apostles, guiding the early Christian community with courage and wisdom. He healed the sick, confronted authorities, and spread the message of salvation far and wide. Despite persecution, imprisonment, and constant danger, Peter never wavered. Peter traveled beyond Jerusalem, spreading the gospel to Jews and Gentiles alike. One of his most defining moments came when he had a vision of a sheet filled with animals considered unclean by Jewish law. A voice told him, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This vision opened Peter's heart to the universality of the gospel, that salvation was for all people, not just the Jews. He baptized Cornelius, a Roman centurion, breaking barriers and showing that the Christian message was meant for the whole world. Tradition holds that Peter eventually made his way to Rome, the heart of the empire. There he led the Christian community, establishing a foundation that would endure for centuries. He is regarded as the first bishop of Rome, the first pope, holding the keys to the kingdom given to him by Christ. Peter did not become pope in the modern sense of the word through an election or formal appointment as we know it today. Instead, his role as the first leader of the church was rooted in Jesus' words and actions during his ministry. When Jesus said to Peter, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it," Matthew 16:18, he gave him a unique position of authority among the apostles. This declaration symbolized that Peter would serve as the foundation and guiding figure for the early Christian community. After the resurrection, Jesus further entrusted Peter with leadership responsibilities. In a tender moment by the Sea of Galilee, Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" and each time instructed him to feed my sheep. John 21:15-17. This powerful command was not just about forgiveness after Peter's denial, but also about commissioning him to shepherd the flock of believers. By these words, Peter was recognized as the chief shepherd of the church, responsible for guiding, teaching, and protecting the faithful. As the apostles began spreading the gospel, Peter naturally emerged as their leader. On the day of Pentecost, he stood up before a crowd in Jerusalem and boldly proclaimed the message of the risen Christ. His sermon led to the baptism of about 3,000 people, marking the birth of the church. This moment was seen as the first exercise of his authority as head of the apostles and confirmed his leadership in the growing Christian movement. In the years that followed, Peter made critical decisions for the early church. One of the most significant was his role in welcoming Gentiles into the Christian faith. After receiving a vision from God, he declared that the gospel was not just for Jews, but for all people. This decision, accepted by the apostles and elders, shaped the universal nature of Christianity and solidified Peter's authority as leader and decision-maker. When Peter eventually traveled to Rome, the center of the Roman Empire, he continued his leadership of the Christian community. Rome became a central hub for the faith, and as its bishop, Peter's role carried even greater influence. The title of Pope, meaning father, developed later, but Peter's position as the first bishop of Rome made him the spiritual leader of all Christians. This is why the Catholic Church recognizes him as the first pope, the head of the church, and the holder of the keys to the kingdom entrusted by Christ. Rome was a dangerous place for Christians under Emperor Nero, who brutally persecuted them after the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. Peter was arrested, imprisoned, and ultimately sentenced to death. Peter accepted his fate with courage. According to tradition, when condemned to crucifixion, he requested to be crucified upside down, declaring himself unworthy to die in the same manner as his Lord. Today, his burial site is believed to be beneath St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, one of the holiest sites in Christianity. His martyrdom sealed his legacy as a faithful servant of Christ, willing to give his life for the faith he once denied, but later proclaimed with unwavering devotion.